Broadcasting from the business capital of the world, this is the Podcast Business News Network.
We are back with Malachite Yoga. Our friend Blair Douglas joining us here once again. And she's from Denver, Colorado, and working as a yoga therapist, helping so many people. She founded her company. It's called Malachite Yoga. And if you want to find her, go to the website, malachiteyoga.com, MALACHITEYOGA.com. How are you today?
I'm good. How are you, Jill?
Good. What's the definition of malachite, by the way?
So malachite's it's a stone.
Yes.
So it's a green stone, which is one of the many colors that I'm very fond of. Like you'll see a lot of time I'm either wearing green, if there's green in the background. But when I was going through business names and stuff, I wanted something that represented what I was going towards, which green for like the chakra system is like the heart center. And I like the color green. So there was a lot of other reasons, but also it's a little bit obscure enough that it's not something well known by people, like the word malachite, which makes it a little more interesting instead of it being a somewhat used word in a lot of yoga industry today is like different Sanskrit words and stuff like that. So I chose something slightly different.
Perfect. Thank you so much. All right. So
Yeah.
tell us a little bit about what you do as a yoga therapist. Give us a little bit of your background, and then we'll talk today. I'm sure we'll recap, I should say, a little bit about what we spoke last time, which was 2 weeks ago.
Yeah.
Please. Thank you so much.
Yeah. So like Jill was saying, my name is Blair and I'm a yoga therapist, certified yoga therapist. I specialize in chronic pain, neurological disorders, and functional mobility. And so kind of what that means is pretend like you've never been to a yoga class, you don't know about yoga just based off Instagram, things like that. How I see people in a therapeutic way is we meet one-on-one. And so I work with individual clients working towards their goals and needs. So no matter if it's something where we've had an accident and then it's caused some chronic pain or some mobility issues, or they've been diagnosed with a neurological disorder, we work with those functionalities, but also the whole person. So mental, emotional, social, all those aspects of your life also kind of get worked with. And think of yoga in the way of not just like asana practice, which means like movement based. Sometimes it's much more mental. And sometimes it's like just going on a walk. So we kind of just use our own lineage of all the different types of yoga. So my client doesn't need to know anything about yoga. I just kind of show up and then we build basically home practices based on what they need to help support them.
And you've been doing this for quite some time, right? Just a little bit of your background quickly.
Yeah, of course. So I actually started practicing yoga in, I think it was 2008 when I went into college, and mostly because of stress related stuff and some back issues I had some minor scoliosis that was causing some pretty severe back discomfort. And I'd been seeing a chiropractor pretty regularly, but going to college, obviously didn't see the chiropractor anymore because they were much further away. Started taking yoga classes and realized my spine and back felt a lot better just from getting movement into it and kind of conditioning the muscles to support my back in a better way. And this is my own personal story, so it's not like that for everybody, but that's what I found and why I got really drawn to it. I've been teaching since 2014. Sorry, it's a long lineage of my background and years. And then I've had a lot of education since 2014 on, basically to build up to this last degree I got, which is certifying me as a certified yoga therapist. So that takes a number of years, obviously, to process through. It's kind of what I consider the equivalent to like a PhD program when you're going through yoga. Your bachelor's degree is your 200 hour, your 300 hour is like a master's, and then your PhD is the 800 hours in for therapeutic reasons. But yeah, so I know last time what we talked about was I was talking about these pillars that Neil and Lisa had developed around chronic pain, and kind of this discussion of last time we talked more about thoughts, right? So we did this simulation, the lemon simulation, and just how our thoughts can impact our chronic pain. And so this week, what I thought it'd be nice to talk about is one of those other pillars, which is tension, which is something that comes up for me quite often in my own
All the
body.
time. Yep.
And it's one of those things, like, I laugh about it too, right? Like, you approach somebody and like you can almost immediately notice if stuff is going on. Half the time their shoulders are in their ears or something's going on and you're like, are you okay? You look very tense. Like, that's a common thing that's a lot of people have either said or had said to them. And it's kind of one of those things where we don't think about how our body is holding itself sometimes when we're in a stressful situation. Even when we're not in a stressful situation, sometimes we're doing odd things or things that maybe aren't as best serving at that moment for us. So I kind of wanted to give you some examples, and I'll just talk from a personal experience. uh, when I was in college, I started noticing I was having some knee discomfort and issues. Hadn't had any accidents, nothing hit, like no falls, no like tweaked injuries, and was couldn't really figure out what was going on. But I was really guarded going up and down stairs. I started finding that I had like this pull and tight pinching in my knee. And one day I was driving and I realized, and this was in my left leg, I realized I fully had my foot flexed back towards my shin and I was engaging my entire leg the entire time I'm driving. And I started realizing I was like doing that all the time, to the point where I was like, there might be something else happening here where I have just triggered in this sensation of like all this engagement. And sometimes it could be from stress, right? Like, especially, I know driving in different big cities, especially Denver has grown so significantly, but even that, you're sitting in traffic or there's just people not paying attention and you're on this guarded situation constantly. And one of the triggers for me was like I was using all the muscle engagement in this one leg all the time. So after I started realizing like I was doing these things unconscious to myself, if I could pay attention a little bit more, I started realizing I had more control over the discomfort and pain and stuff coming up in my leg. Part of it was I was just over fatiguing a lot of stuff in my leg, but I see this happen pretty commonly. And it can happen on a much more acute way, right? So I won't assume completely, Jill, but I'm going to somewhat assume at some point in your life you've been working on something, maybe it's a more stressful project, or you're packing up or moving or something else. Usually a lot of times what I see by the end of that situation is people's body is pretty tense, or you're like, I have one shoulder that doesn't feel right, or maybe both shoulders. Do you kind of know, has that come up before?
All the time. Speaking of, I had a herniated disc a few months ago, and I have this wrist problem.
Hmm.
Yeah, you don't realize sometimes when we're overworking, even like being on the computer and the mouse and the phones nowadays, and people, yes, you
Yeah.
don't realize, oh my gosh, I'm hurting myself. Yeah.
Yeah. And there comes a point where it's like sometimes our body gets used to those positions. So, say we're doing something repetitively, what can happen for some people, right, is your structure of your body, the way we hold it, you'll start to notice this happens a lot in like older individuals. So, it can happen in younger individuals too, like a kyphosis. So, the shoulders are coming forward. We have more of a rounding in the back. The head is projected forward, and that's from this like forward motion constantly, right? So we're on the computer, we're on our phone, we're driving, we're looking down at stuff. It can be pretty common too with people that have started using walkers or canes, things like that, because right, we're all of a sudden projected our body in a much more forward pattern. So it can be kind of difficult to go back, to get back to a space, because you can also get used to it, and it can be even the opposite can happen. So we've already developed this like crunch in. And then if you ask somebody like, can you go lay on this bolster or lay down on the ground flat? It can be very uncomfortable and have a lot of sensation for somebody, because the muscles and other things have started getting used to being shortened in the front, maybe lengthened in the back. And then we're asking them to lay over something, and that can be a lot of fatigue and a lot of intense sensation. And it's not to say that that's right or wrong, but what it can be is it's like we need to gradually build back into it. But part of the other thing that I'm talking about too is a lot of times we're functioning just throughout our day and have not checked in at all with what's going on in our body, in the sense of maybe you're sitting up really straight, everything feels pretty good. But this is a really common one for me, is like I always have like one shoulder up a little higher, or like these are, I don't know, it's just something that's become much more of a habit, especially this summer. I've had a lot more stuff going on and a lot of other stressors happening. And I've noticed like I had my friend who's also a doctor, who's one of my closest friends, and she came over. She's a chiropractor and she also does ART work. And she was like, "What is happening in your shoulders?" And I was like, explaining to her, I'd been on some trips, I've been working on some stuff, we were moving some things. And I'm really good at putting extra pressure on myself to get things done. Like I will get up 2 hours earlier to make sure this project gets done because I want it to be done. And so I'll do whatever it kind of takes, to the detriment sometimes of myself, which I even as me, having all the education I have does not mean I don't sometimes override my own system. And there was points where I was working and I'm like, whoa, everything is going to be a little off when I get home. And I already know when I see her, she's going to be like, something's up in your shoulder. And so it's those checking in points where if we can start becoming a little more aware of our body tension. So just even doing little scans of the body, which can be very simplistic. And that's something that I think a lot of times meditation can fall into those places as well. And you can go take online meditations, like find an online meditation that's a body scan. There's can be some variants though that I caution people towards of when going about finding one of those. Sometimes it's good to try to find somebody who knows about chronic pain, because there's a different approach when we're talking about chronic pain. We want people to stay in their body. We're not trying to have an out of body experience. And a lot of times, and by no means do I think any meditation you're listening to is a generic meditation. I'm just going to use this word for a moment in the sense of we want people to feel good. Those meditations aren't necessarily built for somebody with chronic pain though. So I caution people just in the sense of nothing bad's going to happen to you if you take those by any means, but you might get more benefit from finding somebody who knows, either like somebody like myself, who's a therapist or has studied chronic pain, has an understanding of it, just so they like their language and words that they're using for these body scans are more about you and what you're feeling internalized. But I tell people all the time too, like, I just want you to do 5-second check-ins today. One of my best homework, one of the things I give people for homework, which either goes really well or they're like, I do not like this because I have to do these check-ins. And it's short. Like, I'm not asking for 5 minutes. I'm asking for like 5 seconds, 30 seconds of like mid-process of cooking, writing an email, stopping, just closing the eyes usually helps people, and just taking a second and be like, I'm just going to do like a scan through my body to see, am I holding a bunch of tensions in some area that I actually don't need to be doing right now? And I can even see you right now, like moving around. You're like, okay, where am I?
Me.
Like,
I'm feeling it
yeah,
everywhere.
yeah. And it's one of those things, like there's this other line that I've noticed with my clients too, and even myself. I want you to be aware. I want you to check in, but I don't want you to become like paranoid in a sense. Like, right? I don't want it to become something where you're so overly judging everything that's happening that you can't relax at all, because that can be the other teeter. So that's where what I find for a lot of people that are seeing like actual yoga therapy, like therapists, is it can be beneficial because you have somebody who can learn you and learn what's going to be best for you. So they know they'll learn about you in the way of like, is this somebody who, like, if I tell them something, that's going to become everything is going to be about that. And they won't be able to just kind of vary in and it becomes an obsession. And not saying that obsessions actually necessarily could be bad, but we don't also want to go the opposite way of like causing more stress on the body to the point where they're like, I'm just so paranoid now, I can't relax at all. So there's this fine line and balance where we can have these discussions, but I always tell people too, like, go see somebody who specializes in those things, because even if you only go for a few sessions and maybe it's not a good fit, and like yoga therapy is not for everybody. I mean, it is for everybody. Like, everybody is always welcome, but some people that's not gonna land for them, and that's okay. But it's good to know that there's that support system there, that somebody is out there and they want to give you the best like experience possible to start to work with, even just body tension stuff. And so it just sometimes takes some time to figure those things out. But it's been a great learning experience for me, even in my own body, as somebody who's experienced chronic pain, to know like there's these little tricks and tips. So, like we talked about last time, is what are my thoughts doing to impact my pain? Same thing comes in with where's my body tension. So, if this is something I'd ask people, like anybody watching this, over the next week, if you're having some pain, discomfort, or even like, it could be anxiety, stress, take a 5-second break and check in with just your body tension. And if you're holding in areas like your jaw, that's a big one for people, necks, jaws, like hips, knees, like joints, especially. And just notice there's nothing that you need to necessarily do. But if it improves it by you're like, okay, I'm just going to go ahead and relax my jaw and see what happens. And if you feel better from that, then that's just something to notate in like, okay, so when I'm in these situations, whether it be chronic pain or some other situation, I am clenching my jaw. If I could just cognitively remember just to relax, it might give me some more benefit. Because that's something that comes up for people too. Like holding tension spots, it doesn't just always like equate to like, oh, I have pain and that's why I'm holding tension. It can be a number of things. And there's no one size fits all. But I'd love to like see people experimenting with that. And that's something that it's talked about. I'm sure I'm not the first person, Jill, you probably heard talk about like, you have a lot of body tension. What if you just tried to relax? I hear it from massage therapists. I hear it from all sorts of people. I am not the first, and I will not be the last to say this because we're human, right? And it comes up across the board, but it's something I love to give people as just like an in to start with. And one other suggestion I have for people like to try is, so say it's kind of hard to remember, you can set an alarm on your phone, like pick 2 times a day. You want to set an alarm for taking 5-second breaks. The other option is, which I also like to give people, if there's different rooms in your house that you know you're going to end up in a couple times a day, pick an object, put it in a spot you're going to see it. And every time you look at that object, take a little body scan, take a little break. Something like that, because some people really don't want to be attached to technology and they don't want alarms going off, which I can completely understand. So then how can we give ourselves like a visual cue and it just be something a little more entertaining? So it could be like a moved a potted plant into a different spot, or like a rock or a piece of art or anything. It doesn't have to be something like crazy, but just acknowledging like, okay, I can set up other ways to like re-stimulate myself to like check in.
Mm-hmm.
And so checking with our body tension, but then also, like we talked about last time, is like checking with our thoughts. So having those 2 balancing points, and those are just like the 2 starting points. We still have breath, which I want to talk about next week, but this week is really the thought process of how are we holding tension in the body? And could it be even deeper? The other experiment is okay, so maybe it's not something as specific as like some really noticeable spot. But even checking in to see like, what if I'm just like clenching my fist, or like one finger is getting kind of cramped up because I'm actually holding like a pen very tightly. Things like that, where I find myself, even because I don't handwrite that often anymore, right? We always type everything. If you handwrite something, well, at least this comes up for me. I'll catch myself and I'm like, I'm like pressing super hard and doing odd things. And I'm like, why am I doing this? But it's something that I haven't done in a while. And a lot of times I'm just like usually I'm trying to write something nice, right? Like you're trying to write a card and I'm trying to make it like straight, or like something where it's just causing me enough anxiety as I do it to feel like I'm putting extra pressure. And then I'm like, now my hand is very stiff and sore. So things like that. And I'm sure
I
too
do
for
that with
you.
my teeth grinding.
Do you?
And now I'm noticing it now. When I talk to people, I notice I'm like, I'm grinding my teeth as I'm listening to you. I'm like, okay, I got another one. Yep. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's just those little things. And it's one of those situations where people are like, sometimes you just don't even realize you're doing it.
Mm-hmm.
The muscles have so learned the trait that they're very much involved, and they're like, I'm just going to hold you like this. But one of the things like I've learned about myself this summer is just with the amount of personal stuff we had going on in my own life with having a family member pass and some, just other situations. Even though I mentally felt like I was in a really good, I was like, I feel pretty good, like everything feels fine. I've had, instead of having like the mental anxiety and stress, my body has been really reacting to it to the point where I've noticed like I'll be doing my hair or makeup or something and I'm like hunched forward to an extent where I'm like, there's no reason I should be sitting like this, but it's so much of a safety mechanism of me closing off the whole front side of my body. And so getting myself to just try to relax that part, but also acknowledging like my stuff that's going on is I've overridden the system, thinking, oh, I've overridden the system. And the body said, that's hilarious. I'm going to go ahead and then show up in other ways in you. And I've had a lot of other stuff happen in the last like couple months too, just with breathing and like not being able to get breath in. And at the doctor's office, like I actually can't breathe. I'm really concerned. They thought I had like a lung blood clot. And they're like, so you don't have a blood clot, but we think you might be having really severe anxiety. And I was like, I don't think so. I feel pretty relaxed. They're like, you don't look very relaxed. So it's one of those things, like, even for myself, that's where it plays a big difference to have somebody else look at me and get to see me. Because we can do those check ins for ourselves, but sometimes it is hard. I need that, like, reflective point of somebody talking to me and interacting with me and seeing that, just like with my clients, like, I want to see them. And sometimes I do end up on phone calls with people just because technology isn't playing fair. That happens. Or we somebody doesn't feel good that day. They don't want to be on camera, but they do need to talk to me. Or they have questions for me. And so we do it that way. But seeing somebody too and having that reflection back to learn more about, like, for me to sit with them and also see their body language and where tension points are coming up can be very beneficial because I can then interact with them and reflect back that information to them. And I'm sure, Jill, you've probably been through these experiences too, just like we were talking about before, where you're like, somebody's noticed something and they've said something to you like, well, how are you doing this? And like, you seem kind of tense, stuff along that line, I'm assuming.
I feel like I'm like that a lot, to be honest with you. And you really, everything you're talking about, I'm just feeling every crack, crevice in my body, what I'm doing wrong. Then I'm sitting and I'm slouching. I'm sitting, my foot's up like this. It shouldn't be in a heel. It should be down on the floor. I'm like all these things, and let alone my wrist problem, which is getting better. But wow, y- it's about being aware too. A lot of us aren't so self-aware. We forget to be aware.
Yes. There's that like little thought, and like that's part of what yoga therapy is us helping people remember how they want to feel. And that's kind of like a simplistic term, but a big term. Like, truly think about that as like, think about when you were a little kid and everything felt really good in your body. Like, maybe you might not have been this child, but like for me, I just remember feeling very free. Like, I just go run around. Like, there was no inhibition to like have to stop or like to pause or like rethink about something because I was so uncomfortable or didn't have the energy. There's like this whole other experience we have throughout our lives. So trying to get back to the point like of re-remembering that sensation and feeling on an energetic level, but like how our brain processes, how our body feels. And no, I'm not going to make you feel like you're five again. Like,
No,
that's
I
probably
know,
not
I know,
going to
I
happen.
know. No.
But it's that re-simulation of getting the systems to kind of talk to each other and be like, am I okay? How are we doing here? Like, can I change something right now? Whether it be my thoughts or my body tension, that could play a big factor in how I'm feeling at this current moment. Like, even this morning, I just did some very deep breathing and some press out stuff. And I was like, okay, it just cleared some stuff out that I needed to get out, apparently, because things have felt just a little heavy.
Yeah.
And that, just those little things can very much help. But like I said, this week, check in, see how
Yeah.
your body tension is, see how it is when you're driving. I mean, don't
Oh,
close your eyes when you're driving, but
oh my
if you're
gosh.
stopped, if you're after you parked, check in. How are you feeling right now in comparison to when you started driving? or even in public transit or on phone calls with certain people, could you put it on speakerphone, set the phone down, close your eyes for a second, and just shake off whatever's going on during that conversation and see if you feel a little better during it?
All right, we're going to learn to shake it off a little like Taylor Swift. I'm sorry, but we are just
Yeah,
about out of time. It
all
always
good.
happens, Blair. Would you mind sharing how we can reach you?
Yeah, you can reach me anytime at malachiteyoga.com. You can also reach me via email, which is the same, just with Blair in front of it. So it's MALACHITE yoga.com.
Perfect. Thank you so much. Looking forward to
Yep.
the next time we connect. You have a great day.
You
Thank you
too.
for reminding me of some amazing pointers, and I hope we all learned a lot from this. Okay, I'm going to go now, move my neck, unkink it a little
Yep.
more, and take off my shoes. All right. Thank you so
Yep.
much. Have a great day, Blair.
Thanks. Hi, my name is Blair Douglas, and I'm a certified human. Just kidding. I'm actually a certified yoga therapist, specializing in chronic pain, neurological disorders, and functional mobility. If you're somebody living with one or all of these things and looking for support in your life, contact me anytime at malachiteyoga.com. That's MALACHITE yoga.com. I look forward to hearing your story.
Are you looking for even more of the podcasts and hosts that you love? The Podcast Business News Network is proud to announce that you now have even more ways to listen live. Check out the MyTuner Radio, online radio box, and Simple Radio apps on iOS and Android, or find us online. Search for Business News Network on mytuner-radio.com, or search Podcast Business News Network on streama.com and onlineradiobox.com/US. Take your podcast on the go and don't miss a minute of the action.
Broadcasting from the business capital of the world, this is the Podcast Business News Network.
For nearly 2,000 severely injured veterans, everyday life has become filled with barriers.
Day-to-day simple tasks can become pretty daunting.
I have to carry my chair up 2 flights of steps or have somebody do it for me.
What scares me the most is just the falling.
When I'm struggling with my house, I think, to have that one great barrier just knocked down, it's crucial.
Home for Our Troops is a wonderful nonprofit that builds a
Mortgage-free, fully adaptive, handicap-accessible house. And there's no catch.
It'll be our very first home that we've ever owned. This is a game changer.
This is where your life begins again.
We need you to join us in completing this important mission. Please visit hfotusa.org and help build homes and rebuild lives.
Because of you, everything's going to be okay.